Section 1904, it's a rainy Monday afternoon. If you were one of the 73,089 people who had themselves quite a Saturday in America's finest city, maybe some people that are part of the section were there as well. Between Petco Park and Snapdragon Stadium, Padres Braves, and then Saturday night, LAFC and San Diego Football Club, 73,089 people announced attendance between the two venues. How many of them are in Section 1904? We do want to hear from you. I was one of them. Not in both. I contributed to the 32,502 that were at Snapdragon Stadium, not the 40,587 at Petco Park. Johnny G, were you one of them?
No,
No?
I was not. No, I was one of the few at the La Jolla Playhouse to see 3 Summers of Lincoln. I highly recommend it. It was fantastic. And then I went home and I watched Padres win on TV, and then I watched San Diego FC beat LAFC on TV. Did it all while my wife was a little under the weather, so I had to do a little extra parenting. But that was my weekend. I certainly, there's always a pull when the season starts to get down there and catch a game. Haven't caught a game at Petco yet. Was hoping it would be Saturday or Sunday. It ended up being neither. It's going to have to wait until after I get back from this week's spring break vacation. But happy to hear that so many of those people got to go home happy with a win in their pocket.
Yeah, that's a good number. 2 wins, right? Imagine if you did the double. If you got out of Petco Park and took the Green Line or hitched a ride with Manny and Profar and made your way in there to Mission Valley.
I want to talk about that.
Or took an Uber or whatever it was. I don't even know. I don't know exactly what time the Padre game ended because by that point I was in pregame mode for SDFC.
It was, I know this because I wasn't. And so the Padres game ended, and I remember looking at my watch and being like, it was like 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
That you had before first pitch
right.
not first pitch, first touch.
Kickoff.
At Snapdragon Stadium.
Right, yeah. So that's, you could, and it was a close game. So
yeah.
The game at Petco Park, obviously. Imagine thinking that you would go to 2 games on the same day, a baseball game and a soccer match. One game would finish 1-0. The other game would finish 3-2. What would you have bet your money on? Which scoreline would you have bet the money on being in which particular sport? You probably would have said 3-2 baseball, 1-0 soccer, right?
Absolutely.
Probably would have bet on that.
Especially the way that San Diego FC has been playing these low-scoring affairs. For a moment, it felt like you were right with your preseason prediction that this was going to be a team that scored a lot and gave up a lot of goals.
Yeah.
But man, that game went sideways in good ways and bad.
Oh, it was bonkers.
Do you want to start there? Or do you want to start with Padres?
I just, before we go into either one of them, it is a Monday, and we are at Mason Ale Works in Barrio Logan. Padres are playing a little later on, we'll get some thoughts. Padres and the Cleveland Guardians are in town. I did not check the weather report, so I had no idea that it would be kind of shitty out here today. But it is kind of shitty out here. By the time people listen to this podcast, maybe it'll be less shitty.
Hopefully.
I hope that's the case. I don't even check the weather, so this is always a huge shock to me. If it's not being blasted out there for everybody, that there's some sort of inclement weather. I'm totally unaware of what it is that's happening.
Oh, weather's getting less accurate too. No funding for weather balloons. We don't know what's coming anymore.
I can't even be bothered to look at my phone.
Yeah.
I don't know what to really compare Saturday to, from the standpoint of having multiple major league events in the city on the same day. I don't really know what to compare it to. I know where my mind goes from the days where we had both the Chargers and the Padres.
That's where my mind went.
That would play on the same day. I don't know, is a horse racing part of this conversation? And I don't mean to leave out the Gulls. I don't mean to leave out anybody else. We know that there are other teams that play in town, but just strictly limiting this conversation to be elitist to major league sports, Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, right?
Yeah.
Places where you can expect to see crowds of 40,000, 30,000 plus.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a day where we had major events that we don't have to go all the way back to 2016. There were times where I remember the Padres playing a playoff game against the St. Louis Cardinals. It was probably 2005. Simultaneously, the Chargers were playing at Qualcomm Stadium against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah.
So I do remember that day. I do remember San Diego State basketball is, it's big-time college basketball, but I remember the day Jerry Coleman passed away, actually, where they played at Kansas and the Chargers played a playoff game at Cincinnati. Again, I don't know that that's exactly what we're comparing this to because it's two events happening in the city with a little bit of overlap, right? Not just Manny and Profar. Lots of fans. I know lots of fans. One of our former colleagues, Alex Padilla of Kaplan and Crew. Alex Padilla told me that this was something he and his buddies were going to do. I'd love to know how their Sunday morning fell, but they were going to do Padres in the afternoon, then they were going to do SDFC in the evening. I don't really know what to compare it to, and I'm just trying to find something other than Padres and Chargers because I have done a lot of those types of days in my past, dating back to 2003, where both teams were playing on the same day, sometimes simultaneously, and sometimes our crew would go to Qualcomm, sometimes our crew would go to Petco Park starting in 2004. But it was pretty unique. I mean, it was a really, really unique feel in San Diego, I thought, on Saturday.
It was very unique. I think you started it with the right point, which was 73,000, whatever your number was.
Yeah.
And this is why the Del Mar racetrack does not count for me personally, because that is 73,000 people who sat and watched at least one sporting event that day, if not two. No one goes to Del Mar racetrack to sit and watch a sporting event. Most people don't. Some people do. Most people go because it's a party. You go with your friends, you eat some food, there's drinks, you put down a bet, you watch a horse race, you miss a horse race. It's different. So the last time that I think I've had some sort of double feature like this in San Diego that was not specifically Padres-Chargers was, I'm not sure if it was still called Qualcomm, but I think there was a day where there was a U.S. women's national team game at Qualcomm on like a Sunday afternoon. At like 1 o'clock, and then a Padres game that would start at like 5 o'clock. Maybe it's a Saturday then. Padres game would start at 5 o'clock, and we tried to do both. You'd go to one, you'd try and stay sober enough so you could make it to the Padres game afterwards, and then drink there, and then, feel terrible for the morning after. That's the only thing, but those are one-offs, right? Like, we talked about before the Padres season started, I even asked you, like, is there going to be a day where San Diego FC outdraws the Padres, both playing in San Diego? I don't know how close they came, probably short of 10,000 or whatever this week, but we were looking forward to these types of days because, since the Chargers left, I think San Diego's been missing these kinds of days because they feel like events.
And if you're a sports fan, I think that this sort of speaks to what it's like being in a sports city, right? Not that anybody here needs convincing that San Diego is a sports town. If you're listening to a podcast called Section 1904, you probably are a sports fan dialed in here in the city of San Diego, right? And in the county of San Diego. And I also don't need to make this some sort of declaration against Dean Spanos or the Chargers either. That's really not even something I think about on a regular basis.
Right.
I think it also speaks to something else, that if there's any competition amongst local professional teams, it's sort of silly. The county's big enough that it can manage both of these things, and there doesn't need to be any sort of business side rivalry existing between the two, right? Like somebody had suggested to me, like, like this conflict about wishing SDFC well on social media. Maybe it's because, everybody's competitive and all that sort of stuff. We just had a day where you had 40,000 plus in one place, 32,000 plus in another place. I think we're okay. I think we're doing okay as a sports community that we can live with both of these without there being some sort of manufactured competition between the two. So I think we can move on.
We lived with the Padres and Chargers for how long, and both teams were well supported, and you didn't have to pick one or the other. Most people were fans of both. And I imagine most people that were at the San Diego FC game, the LAFC crowd, pushed aside, we're also Padre fans, so it's okay. And sometimes when we see our teams playing nice with one another, it makes us feel a little bit better.
I mean, that was deliberate, and that was something that the Chargers insisted on doing, is, they used to have this real arrogance to them that they carried themselves as if they were the Dallas fucking Cowboys, and it's just not who they were, but that's the way they felt they should be treated in this market. They didn't feel like they had that kind of reputation nationally or internationally, just locally, that they were the big swinging Richards around town and that everybody else was just a huge drop off, But anyhow, the less we can do talking about them, I think the better. It was a really, really fun day. It was really energetic day. It was electric at Snapdragon Stadium. It was electric at Petco Park all weekend. I mean, I guess I know we're going to steer clear of getting into the minutia on a day in, day out basis, but we just had a 4-game series, 4-game sweep, right? Sunday Night Baseball. We're actually going to talk a little bit about Sunday Night Baseball coming up tomorrow, since I don't know how many more times Sunday Night Baseball is going to be in San Diego.
Yeah.
Right? I think people are generally aware that ESPN and Major League Baseball have mutually agreed, in the inverted commas, mutually agreed that they are going to part ways after this season, after 2025. What that might mean or look like is anybody's guess. So we're going to talk to Richard Deitch from The Athletic, who covers sports media and has from his days at Sports Illustrated, now at The Athletic, about what that might mean for a team like the Padres, which relies on national broadcasting money, right? This is a $550 million deal that is going to disappear at the end of the year, according to both sides. So I don't know exactly. The Padres don't have a great local television deal. As a matter of fact, they don't have any local television deal. So I don't really know what that means for them, but it would make me a little nervous that, you have these players who are performing, and this becomes a little bit of a storyline. But man, what a weekend. I mean, just in reverse chronological order, I feel like I'm going to spend a second here taking a victory lap about Nick Pivetta.
Oh, baby. I got thoughts on Nick Pivetta.
Nick Pivetta, who had, I haven't looked up all of his game scores, but easily one of the top 2 or 3 starts of his career was on Sunday Night Baseball for the Padres. I think I'm accurate in saying that.
I can look it up if you'd like.
But
I tend to think you're correct.
I read a piece from Kevin Acey today that it's only been a handful of times that he went 7 innings and allowed 0 runs, I think 2 or 3 times in his career. So right then and there, it goes to show you it's as impressive a statistical start for Nick Pivetta as he has had. I felt like he was a huge addition to the rotation. I've talked about it when it was bandwagon biatch and on other programs. Anybody and everybody who would listen to me, I'd be like, oh man, this Nick Pivetta signing for $55 million, this feels like a really good deal. And now that I'm done strutting, I will tell you, also, that was like the first time I think I've ever watched him.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know that I've ever actually watched Nick Pivetta before. Last night, Sunday night, on Sunday Night Baseball. But yeah, he looked good, and I feel good about that.
I'm going to do an old man thing, and I hope you will join me in this, Darren. I had never seen more than a couple highlights of Nick Pivetta, and then I watched Nick Pivetta pitch. And the more I watched Nick Pivetta pitch, the more he reminded me of a Padres player from the past, a Padres pitcher from the past.
Okay.
Not necessarily in terms of what he looks like, but definitely in terms of how he was trying to pitch, the types of results he was getting, at least in his first game. Now, this could he could come out in his second game and get walloped, but it made me think of a player from the Padres, probably from around that 2005 era, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, no, later, like 2005, 2008, around there. Would you like to take a guess on who Nick Pivetta reminded me of?
No, but I'm glad that you have a name. I was thinking just watching him that his mechanics and everything about him reminded me of somebody, but I just couldn't place it while I was watching it. And I hope that you're going to say the name that I couldn't come up with, but I was trying to picture. Because I just thought it was like mechanics. Everything about it looked similar. I just couldn't, for the life of me, put my finger on it.
I might be wrong. We might be thinking of different people. My guy, as a clue to you, we used to have a poster of him at the Mighty 1090. It was a height chart.
Chris Young.
Yeah. And Pivetta, coming in with these high fastballs that no one could really do anything with except get under or ground out on, felt very Chris Young-y. And it was just like, you're watching him. Like, I remember watching Chris Young going like, he should be getting hit. He doesn't have the nastiest stuff. He should be getting hit. He's throwing high fastballs. That's what hitters want. And they just couldn't get on top of the high fastball. And that felt like that was true for Pivetta as well. There was a lot of loud outs that went to the warning track that felt like Petco Park is going to be friendly to him. But it also felt like the batters never quite knew what was coming from him or how to prepare for it. So it felt very Chris Young to me. Was that your guy? Probably not.
It was not. It was not only because Chris Young was 6'10", freakishly tall, and didn't have a ton of velocity.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Pavetta's that tall. But
he's like probably 6'3".
And I'm trying to think of how Chris Young would look. I mean, there is something about, the way the shoulders and all that sort of stuff. And he obviously has way more velocity than CY did, right?
Yeah,
CY, like his whole game was low 90s, but it felt like it was 1,000 miles per hour because he was standing. By the time he was done with his stride, he was probably 54 feet away from you.
That's what they would say. It would feel like a 99-mile-an-hour pitch when it was 91 because his release point was like 6 inches closer. And so, like, I don't quite know what Pavetta was doing that was garnering those similar kind of results, except for just throwing harder. But I don't know. Chris Young always made me feel really comfortable. I never watched him and went like, oh, God, this could blow up in any second. And that was the feeling I was getting from Pavetta yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, he's 32 years old. I mean, the fact that I hadn't really seen him pitch until he debuted as a Padre probably says more about me than it does about Pavetta, who came from the Red Sox. But, again, it couldn't have gone better. And honestly, like, that's not even what I was talking about when I thought it was such a big signing. I thought it was just his presence, him being there, him being in a rotation where, again, if you go back and look at 2024, it was Dylan Cease, it was Michael King, and then there's this huge gap between what it was that was third. I mean, it was Matt Waldron probably, and then combining Darvish and Musgrove for about a full season, perhaps plus. That's kind of how the Padres won 93 games last year.
Yeah.
So, to have this season with King and Cease, and I know neither of them. I mean, it's funny that King and Cease were probably third and fourth when it came to the most impressive first starts of 2025, right?
Yeah.
You go Pavetta, then you go with Vasquez, then you'd say
probably Cease
and King, right? And by the time next time through, it'll probably invert.
Right.
But, even still, like, you feel pretty good about those guys, their projections, where they left off 2024. And then all of a sudden you throw Pavetta in there, you're like, okay, that's not something that you have to worry about, right? He's a dude who's going to go out there, he moves quick, so you can tell the infielders, right? Like, this is the opposite before the pitch clock when Blake Snell would pitch, and you could go to these games and you could see the infielders kind of falling asleep. So he moves really quickly. I'll have to think about the Chris Young thing, though. But yeah.
I was thinking about the pitching staff from this perspective, and I'll zoom out and then I'll zoom back in. When the Padres announced what their opening day roster was going to be, I saw a lot of Padre fans complaining and going like, oh, man, we don't even have a chance now. And I was like, that's weird. Like, I know they replaced Profar with Hayward and Higashioka with, Diaz at catcher, but it feels very similar to last year's team. And even to this point, like, remember last year, Darvish missed most of the season.
Yeah.
Musgrove missed most of the season. I don't think that's... And so you were kind of relying on, like, Cease, King, and, I hope we get something good from the other guys. And this time through, I mean, look, you got something great from Vasquez. You got something great from Pavetta. If that holds, that's amazing for them. But also, like, Darvish could come back. Like, he's throwing. Sounds like he's getting a little bit better. This was a question I had for you. Because I think I saw this during one of the broadcasts. They said that Musgrove is going to start, like, soft tossing this week. And I was like...
I think he's out for the whole year.
No. But this was kind of my question of, like, if he's soft tossing now... Granted, it's been 5 or 6 months since his surgery, right? So you look 5 or 6 months from now. Would the Padres be so stupid? Would Musgrove be so stubborn to be like, no, I'm coming back in, like, September. I need to be a part of this team for the playoffs. Do you think that there's a chance that they have September circled and they're like, Musgrove's going to make it back by then? Because I was ready to push him to the side and be like, he's gone for the year. And they're like, oh, he's throwing. And even he was like, oh, I'm going to try and take it easy even though I'm throwing. But I was like, if he's throwing now, I don't know. Maybe you just do it to see how the elbow's feeling, but it felt like a weird thing for them to start doing.
I didn't see that, so I didn't know that Musgrove was even throwing.
I think they said this week he's going to start throwing.
Yeah, I'm not going to put a single cent on Musgrove coming back, and I don't think the organization would either.
But then why is he throwing? I thought it was weird.
I don't know. Maybe it's just a natural part of his rehab.
I was like, it has been 5 or 6 months. Maybe it's a natural part of his rehab. But like, if you're not expecting him to throw real Major League Baseball innings for a year, it feels like a strange thing to do.
Yeah. Again, maybe it was just part of the rehabilitation process. You know, he is a pitcher. You probably want to. I don't know. I did not see that, so it's impossible for me to really comment on it. But I would say that 2025 is completely off the table for Joe Musgrove. Willing to be wrong, but I would say it's completely off the table. I mean, almost nobody comes back in that kind of time frame from when it was that he had his surgery. So yeah. But I mean, even just seeing him, I was like, oh, just seeing him around the park or seeing him in different video clips, I'm always like, oh man, that looks like it's going well. I find myself surprised he's not even in a sling.
At all.
I'm like, oh, okay, I guess it's going pretty well. Like I broke a collarbone. I was in a sling forever.
I mean, if he's going to start tossing, then eventually he'll start throwing like before games, right? We'll get like video footage of him and see how comfortable he is throwing.
I'm gonna say
I'll push that off to the side. We'll deal with it later.
0% chance. Yeah, and again, fun weekend. 4-0. I'm sure it's been pointed out. I think you play the Braves 7 times, so to be 4-0 is. They
already won the season series.
It feels like it might be. It feels like it potentially could be significant. I don't know. Too early for me to get into that.
No, potentially. Like, it's absolutely potentially significant.
Yeah, I mean, there's 158 more of these things, so nothing feels significant after 4 games. Nothing does, unless you're 0-4.
Yeah, that was my question to you. And let's see, the Braves, like, this is the thing. You don't know if the Braves are just really bad or if the Padres are really good or if this is just one of those weird series where you catch each other in a weird spot. Has anything changed for you about how you feel about the Padres in the last 4 games? Like,
no.
A week ago to now, you feel exactly the same?
I do.
Me too.
I did. I mean, I think I'm on record having said I think it's a good team. I don't know why we're talking about trading away Dylan Cease and Luis Ariz, although he's 0 for 13. So clearly a player past his prime, but totally a guy that you can't rely. No, I've said it, so I'm going to stand by it. Obviously, things can change dramatically in the span of a week, especially this early. I mean, it is. It's funny. You go. You're a Fangraphs guy, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's Fangraphs. Maybe it's Baseball Savant. I don't remember which site. But there are some sites that won't even put up your season statistics yet because they know how stupid it is. It just is a continuation of 2024 plus 9. I think that might be Baseball Savant.
I think Baseball Savant does that or did that.
I was looking up barrel percentage, John, since the subject matter from weekend number 1 of Major League Baseball
bats
is all about the bowling pin bats. Is that what they're called?
I think they're called torpedoes.
The torpedo bats?
I've been calling them fat bats, but
bats.
Bowling pin is not a bad one.
Bowling pin, torpedo bats, right. Since you couldn't watch 5 minutes of Sunday Night Baseball without hearing a conversation about torpedo bats, which honestly is just what Sunday Night Baseball has become. And I don't know that's... I didn't think it's just a sign of the times that it's a talk show with a game going on.
Darren, they spent 5 minutes talking about how Derek Jeter would have benefited from these bats during a game that the Yankees were not in and a sport that Jeter hasn't played in a decade. Yeah. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life.
I missed that. I did hear a lot of the conversation, and it was news to my ears that there were new baseball bats. And my first thought was like, isn't this illegal?
No.
I mean, how is this legal that you could just change the actual physical shape of a baseball bat? Like, didn't people raise a stink when the Rockies started putting baseballs in humidifiers because it was doing so? And then I looked it up, and there actually are so few rules associated with baseball bat and the specifics of baseball bats that it appears this is a perfectly legal thing that the Yankees and others are doing, to have these torpedo bats. I liked when they asked Manny Machado in the in-game interview about torpedo bat. He's like, man, I don't know. He's just like, Manny just like does not. It's my favorite thing about him. He's just like, dude, I don't give a shit about any of these things. I don't need to be told where to play third base. I know how to play third base. I don't give a shit about a torpedo bat.
Just make sure
I just know how to rake, and I've been barreling it up there with the best in Major League Baseball for years. I'm just a player, dude. Like, even when he made fun of having that card in his pocket, look at me, I got to read this card to find out what's happening.
He sounded like an old grumpy guy.
Totally. And I do like that about Manny. I feel like it's one of the few things that he and I actually have in common because he's just a ball player, And when this revolution came in Major League Baseball about where players are going to be positioned and how everybody's going to be shifting. Man, he's just like, bro, I don't need any shift. I don't need some propeller head from the front office telling me where I need to stand.
Yeah.
I know how to get to the freaking
I got range.
Yeah, so I thought that was funny. But, yeah, torpedo bats. It at least set me down a rabbit hole trying to figure out which Padres are the worst at barreling the ball over the last couple of years.
So I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole with this. So apparently there have been many different shapes of bats in baseball, but not for a long time. Like they had all these ones, just different shapes and sizes. And yeah, with the bats and MLB rules, they need to be a certain length, and they can't be longer than that. And they need to be a certain width, and they can't be wider than that. But anything else you want to do, you can do. And so it seems like what they're trying to do with this is almost create a sweet spot on the bat that is a little bit closer to the hands
for certain guys.
Right. So you can kind of get the sweet spot of the bat on the ball, even if the pitch is inside, which is a harder thing to do. I'm of a strange opinion with this, which I saw someone go, hey, if this is what's really leading to the Yankees hitting all these home runs, instead of baseball coming out in a couple days and being like, we're banning these bats, shouldn't they just make a very loud statement of like, yeah, anyone can use these bats if they want to, and just let the home runs go crazy? Like, why not, right? It's not steroids. It's within the rules of the game. It's not even a looking the other way rules of the game. It's just within the rules of the game. You have a history of guys using different shaped, oddly shaped bats. There's no cheating here. It's creativity within the rules. This is lawyering. They have lawyered their way to more power, the Yankees have. And I think maybe what baseball is going to do is try and split the baby and go like, all right, no more of this year. We got to give the other teams a chance to get their own bats of whatever shape they want. And after this year, it's all free. But they might just go, hey, you're within the rules. It's fine. And it'll take a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden we'll see all these other guys in baseball testing it out. I don't know.
Through the first 4 days of Major League Baseball, here is the headline on ESPN.com. An MIT-educated professor, the New York Yankees, and the bat that could be changing baseball. This is a significantly lengthy piece from Jeff Passan today, who's already writing about this. Yeah, I feel like golf, though, went through this where, and thank you to everybody who's said, hey, love the pod, love what you guys are doing, including our friend Jason Finley from Callaway Golf. Sent me a nice message over the weekend.
He signed up. I saw. He's a subscriber.
Yeah, so thank you, Jay Finns. I know I owe you. But, I felt like golf went through something like this where all of a sudden the balls were different, and then, the heads of the golf clubs were different, and the shafts were different.
Yep.
And I don't know enough about golf off the top of my head to know if they were breaking rules or finding loopholes. But the PGA Tour and the governing body of golf was like, no, we're making a mockery of this. I don't know that this is making a mockery of the game, especially if it's not in violation of any actual rule. But I know that baseball has been quick. Like sticky stuff was a weird gray area for a lot of pitchers as well. It wasn't pine tar, but what was it?
Yeah.
Well, it was like sunblock.
Yeah.
And it was sunblock and it was rosin.
Yeah.
And so these things really weren't specified in the actual rules as to what it was that we could or couldn't have on our hands. And we don't want pitchers throwing a ball 100 miles per hour and hitting somebody in the face because the balls don't have any tack on them.
People also really freak out when you make a sport or a game look different. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if everyone's going to switch to these bats, baseball all of a sudden looks different. Like historically, when you look at old pictures, you're going to be like, that's a very old picture of baseball. Look at the stupid bats they used to use, right? It's like going from leather helmets to real helmets. So I do think there'll be some pushback just from, old folks who are like, this is not what baseball is supposed to look like. Mm-hmm. But I'm intrigued. I mean, anything that promotes offense that's within the scope of the game that isn't considered cheating, I'm all for. I like the science and the technology of it.
Yeah, I guess it just is. Does it fall into the category? It's not cheating according to the rule book, but again, going back to some of the sticky stuff that dudes were using and foreign substances, I felt like there was some gray area there.
There was,
which is why baseball said we're going to give you a little bit of time to get out of this.
Yeah,
and then afterwards we're going to really start cracking down on it because it had moved beyond pine tar. The way anything that happens in baseball eventually evolves. Yeah, you say steroids. Like, what year is this? 1978?
I know.
Are we talking about like the USSR in the Olympics?
Yeah.
Like steroids is such an old person term for what it is that players were using and have been using
Greenies,
and probably
amphetamines.
still are using
Yeah.
up into this day. Like they're on to things that we don't even know because of the science.
Well, that was the Bonds thing, right? The book
Right.
that was written is basically like he found a scientist and was like, get me
Yeah.
ahead of the rules.
Right. And there's a lot of
Not
people that
necessarily
advocate
him,
for
but-
that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, the enhanced games, like this is their whole, I don't know that that's still a thing or not.
I think that's a Donald Trump Jr. thing now.
Well, it was a Peter Thiel thing.
Oh, that makes sense. They're buddies.
It was something of, hey, like we're limiting human progress. Human progress now is artificial intelligence and all this other sort of
because we're
stuff.
forcing it to be natural competition.
Right. And now we have abilities to give ourselves better looking heads of hair. And we have a way of enhancing muscular development and sustainability in ways that we never could before, right? So, sexual
Performance?
So like there's a lot of things, and like I think I'm not saying that I'm advocating for the enhanced games because it sounded to me like it was a little bit of a freak show, but there was this sort of push towards why are we limiting human development in 2025 and beyond. Anyway, that's really not the point. I don't remember what the point was.
Wait.
But just about there are more efficient ways of doing some things. I don't know that this does or doesn't qualify for that category.
The torpedo bat.
Yeah.
I wanna ask you a question, and this seems like the right time for it because we can transition off this. So I have already seen Braves fans really angry that new free agent addition at the top of the lineup, Jurickson Profar, after losing to the Padres on Saturday night, went out with San Diego Padres third baseman Manny Machado to root for San Diego FC against LAFC at Snapdragon Stadium. I've seen people already angry about this, and then I think I saw he maybe went 0 for 3 in yesterday's game, so there was questions about how hard they partied and all that, which, Manny was there too, had a good game yesterday. I don't care about that because I don't care about the Braves. But B, I'm curious about the other side of it. Like, I saw Manny Machado sitting there with Jurickson Profar, and granted, a couple weeks ago was Manny Machado with all of his San Diego Padres teammates. I get it. But the only person there with Manny at this game, at the LAFC game, was a guy from the other team. Couldn't get anyone. Randy Vasquez didn't want to catch a game.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe other people were there. Just because they didn't show them doesn't mean that they weren't there.
That's true. Suarez could have been sitting in front of him. No one would have known.
Yeah, I mean, there are times where that sort of stuff happens. And it was during a point of the soccer match where they were panning around to Issa Rae was there. She's one of the partners of the club, right? So they were showing her. They were showing a bunch of different people around. I don't know what they did or didn't show on television, but they were showing different people on the video boards at Snapdragon Stadium.
TV.
And first they showed Manny by himself.
Oh, okay.
And then they showed Manny and Jurickson Profar.
Got it.
So I don't know who else was around. I'm sure there were other people that were around. I couldn't swear that there were any Padres there, but I know. I don't know. I'm sure those dudes will be back in some capacity.
Probably.
So I also like that they snuck in an SDFC question to Manny, who was mic'd up during Sunday Night Baseball. Do you think that was a condition of him being mic'd up? I'm going to climb out on a limb and suggest I think so. I think it probably was.
Darren, they wouldn't even go to commercial break. Like, he came off, he's like, well, boys, that was a quick one. And they're like, oh, hold on, Manny, we have to ask you. Like, I was like, oh, they missed their chance or whatever. I thought they were going to commercial. No, Manny, stand on the field for 3 minutes while we ask you a question about your MLS team. And then as soon as you're done answering, we're going to go, all right, bye, Manny, hang up and go right to commercial. It was pretty obviously something that he wanted to get in and something that they had promised that they would ask him about, and they probably thought that they had more time. But I did find it interesting that they not just squoze it in, like literally adjusted the broadcast to make sure they
like held off going to commercial break so
Yeah.
they could sneak in one question.
They probably lost a commercial for
But it's kind of like
break.
when you're a presenter at an award show. You're like, hey, like, am I going to win an award or am I going to look kind of stupid if I go to the show and then I don't win anything? They ask for social media questions and they ask for the hashtag AskSNB. So of course I found myself clicking on this hashtag because yes, I still have a Twitter account. And I found maybe my funniest question for Manny was, who are your favorite MLB radio announcers? And the account was Jesse Agler. So Jesse at 4:45 p.m. on Sunday.
Was he on the air?
At 4:45, the game started at 4:30? Yeah. So
amazing.
During the broadcast or during the commercial break, Jesse Agler said, who are your favorite MLB radio announcers? And sent that question out there into the universe. However, it was not selected in deference to an SDFC question. But,
and a question about torpedo bats, of course.
We can get into Tatis leading off. The John Seidler interview on Friday night.
Oh, God, the John Seidler interview. Tatis leading off is one of those things that I'm not ready to have a strong opinion on, except for your best player should be leading off. And
especially if he wants to.
And he's doing a great job of like being patient and getting on base and then stealing bases ahead of people. I still think Arise batting behind him makes a lot of sense because high contact guy with Tatis on base, you could do a lot of fun stuff with that. But yeah, I don't have any strong opinions on Tatis leading off. If he was doing all this stuff hitting third instead of first, I would.
And it was suggested on the broadcast, at least on the national broadcast that I saw on Sunday night. I don't know if they did or didn't get into this on Saturday on Fox, but it was certainly suggested and a talking point for them that this is what Fernando Tatis Jr. wants to do. That was my interpretation of the conversation on ESPN, and I'm guessing there's probably a reason why they were sticking with that theme.
Yeah, and they even, I think I texted you about this because I thought Schilt gave like a weird answer. When asked about this, his answer was kind of, not everyone gets what they want. And it seemed like he was kind of talking about maybe someone else who had wanted to bat leadoff. And then he was like, but it's what Nando really wanted was to bat leadoff. I mean, look, I think Fernando Tatis Jr. to this point has been, I'm not going to say like a bad clubhouse guy, just like, not a guy who seems like he cares much about anything except showing up, swinging the bat, catching the ball, throwing the ball, like playing the game, right? So him saying, I want to bat first, I want to lead off, I want to get the most at-bats, lead my team, start the rallies, all that, that's a new thing for him. And I like that. And I like the fact that Mike Schilt let that happen. I thought the broadcast, I guess it was the ESPN one that Schilt was interviewed for, they kind of turned it into this like, well, Tatis signed a 14-year deal, and Schilt's deal is obviously not that long, so if you want to be here for Tatis his whole career, you kind of have to give him what he wants, almost making Tatis out to be like a bad guy who steamrolled him. I thought that was a little weird, but, I mean, at the end of the day, they're not wrong. Like, Tatis is here for 14 years. He makes all the money. Sometimes you got to do what that guy says.
And it's also, it's backed up statistically.
Yeah.
You know, I think every place has already pointed out what his career numbers are batting leadoff. So, yeah, if he's healthy and he wants to do it, and I agree with your point from earlier, if you have him on base and he's a stolen base threat, now all of a sudden you have a first baseman who has to cover the bag, or you might have a second baseman who's going to try to cheat over towards second base. That's a huge hole on the right side of the infield for Luis Arraez. I know he's 0 for 13, but it makes actual tactical sense as well. So,
also, when you're stealing second base, the second baseman and shortstop usually run at that bag, so you open up the other side too.
Yeah, so I think that there's reasons for it, but and you're right because Schilt had a weird answer.
It was a weird answer.
Like maybe not everybody's going to be happy. You're like, well, who's he talking about? And I don't know. Is he specifically talking about Rise? I'm not sure. And I'm with you. The John Seidler interview is so forgettable that you've even forgotten about it as a talking point, so we don't need to mention it.
He was so boring.
I felt like I'm not sure this is really what he wants to be doing.
No. I mean, he kind of pointed out a couple times, like, yeah, it's not what I would want to be doing. And they were even like, hey, did Peter tell you that this was like a thing? And he was like, yeah, we talked about it, but I don't know. He just seems like at this point, he seems like he's doing an okay job in the first couple weeks to be in the whatever they call it of this team, chairman of the team. He's not doing anything terrible so far. The team's spending money. The team's good. He keeps promising we want to win a World Series. We want to win multiple World Series. We want to be in the playoffs every year. These are all the things that Peter said. He keeps saying, that the spirit of the club that Peter created is still here. All of that is great. He just seems like one of the most boring people you could ever be in a conversation with.
Yeah, which is okay.
It's fine.
Which is okay. I mean, I don't know that you need a chairman to be up there and be entertaining and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I felt like they were definitely pushing a I hate the word narrative, but I felt like they were definitely pushing this idea that, like, even Don Orsillo says it at one point. He's like, "Wow, I didn't realize how many games you came to. Like, you were here 62 times last year. Wow, that's a lot." You know, obviously people don't realize this because nobody knew who he was.
Why did they have the numbers? Like, why were they like, you 62 games? What was that?
I mean, we get it, guys. You're trying to sell us that he's not some random person that just appeared out of no place following Peter's passing. I get it. Yeah. I understand it, and I'm sure there's some legal reasons for doing that as well, but yeah, there wasn't a whole lot there, and that's fine. It is fine for a chairman not to. You don't need Ron Fowler going on the radio. Sorry to my radio friends. You don't need Ron Fowler telling everybody how bad individual players are and costing the organization tens of millions of dollars in trade value because you're just ripping James Shields to Dan Sileo. We don't need that. All right, so the second part of the weekend, Saturday night, Snapdragon Stadium, SDFC 3, LAFC 2. Listen, this is significant for all the obvious reasons. San Diego, expansion club, 6 matches in, sitting third in the Western Conference following results from Sunday. Being the Kings of Southern California, right? So far, right? So far, you enjoy that while you can.
Yeah.
Getting your first home win, taking your first home lead, doubling that lead, going up 3-0, surviving 3-2, playing the way that they played, getting Lozano back. There's a lot of reasons why. But, you know, in my week of prep for the broadcast, where I was doing pre and half and post on 760, you know, one thing is very clear about LAFC. They fancy themselves as a big club, right? This is a soccer term. Like, they are a big club. And they don't just mean big like we're a big MLS team. They want to be continentally big. They want to be geographically big.
They want to be like Champions League big.
They want to win not just MLS Cup and Supporters Shield, these things that are unique to Major League Soccer, but they want to win the CONCACAF Champions Cup. They're playing Miami on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Right? Messy, 8:30 p.m., BMO Stadium.
The TV broadcast
place is going to be crazy.
The TV broadcast talked about this a few times, like, oh, maybe they're holding off because they got Miami midweek, all that stuff.
Could be. I think that's an excuse.
It seemed like it.
But I understand it also. You know, but they've won trophies. They have celebrity ownership. You know, they very much fancy themselves. They want to be in some tournament coming up later on this summer that maybe people are familiar with called it's called the FIFA Club World Cup. You know, they want to participate in that. They have some sort of pathway potentially. You know, they want to be up there with like Club America and like Chivas Guadalajara. They want to be one of those kind of teams in the Americas. And good for them. That's incredibly aspirational. So, you know, it has a big event status feel to it on a Saturday night when LAFC is in town. And by the way, it's not just the sizzle. Since they came into this league, John, they have the most wins. They have the most points and the most goals in Major League Soccer since they started as an expansion club in 2018.
Not surprised.
Most wins, points, and goals scored.
I mean, they've been really good.
So, steak, sizzle. They do it all. They're the complete package. Great head coach, big-time players. You know, they're a draw. We mentioned last week, you know, a player like Antoine Griezmann, who may or may not be going there. He, he looks at it and goes like, oh, man, being in L.A., that would be, you know. So, anyway, you get the point. So, you know, this is what you're facing on a Saturday night. You know, it's not just 11 v 11 and your squad, their squad. It's, you know, you're facing LAFC and they're bringing their fans and their, you know, fans are up there and they're making a bunch of noise as well. To go up a goal and then go up a second and then go up a third, it's like, whoa, what is happening here?
Yeah.
Like, this is just an incredible atmosphere. Give up a goal at the end in the 43rd minute there. That was a great goal from LAFC, from a player who you wouldn't expect it from their left back. And then you kind of lose concentration in the 5th minute of stoppage time. You're like, oh, shit, this feels different.
Yeah.
And then they just hold on and, you know, suffer a little bit in the second half. I mean, it had a little bit of everything to it. I mean, it was great drama to be there, to be in the building, to feel the energy.
Yeah.
From the time I got there at about 4:00 all the way through the end of the match when I went through the tailgate and what was remaining. It looked like a tornado ripped through it. But it was just, wow. Like if you had to, of course you'd like to get it against St. Louis in your first ever home match. But if you had to say, like, give me your ideal first ever home victory at Snapdragon Stadium, man, I don't know that you could have written a better script for that. And I'll tell you, one of my favorite things, too, was your boy Anibal Godoy.
Oh, I love him.
So, a player gets sent off for LAFC, right?
Yeah.
So, that player's name is Igor Jesus.
Yeah.
So, in the notes of the match, in the 20th minute, there was a lot of yellow cards in this match.
Yeah.
And the way and the style that SDFC plays is going to lend itself to getting fouled a lot because they're going to be aggressive. They're going to have the ball. They're going to get fouled a lot. I promise you by the end of the year, they're going to be one of the most fouled teams in Major League Soccer.
Did you mean to say SDFC?
SDFC. What
you
did I
said
say?
LAFC.
Yeah, SDFC. Its style is going to lend itself to getting fouled a lot. It's just something you'll have to protect your players. And the refereeing, I don't know, it was great. 7 yellows, a red card in this match. But in the 20th minute, Godoy gets fouled by this player for LAFC. Yellow card issued to Igor Jesus.
Yeah.
53rd minute, Jesus picks up a second yellow card. He's red carded. Who did he foul?
Godoy?
Anibal Godoy. Now, if that's not some veteran savvy
Absolutely.
from the Panamanian captain, then I don't, just knowing how to initiate enough contact. And if you're an LAFC fan, you're probably annoyed that your player fell for this. But if you're an SDFC fan, that is just such veteran presence and savviness from Anibal Godoy to create an advantage that they did not capitalize on in terms of scoring.
Yeah.
Which is something I think the coaching staff should probably, they've now played the equivalent of like a full match up a man
and scored 0 goals
between Columbus and LAFC.
Yeah.
But just Godoy knowing what he's doing in a scenario like that to take advantage of it, I thought was phenomenal. And the goal scoring was great. McVeigh. And then into Valakari. I know you love that one.
I do.
Because
I love
it was Lloris who fumbled it right in front of goal.
That was hilarious.
And then Mighton, gets the third and what turned out to be the game winner.
Yeah, and look, Mighton, I gave him some criticism when he came on the last time they were up a man. I said he looked overwhelmed. He looked like he wasn't ready. In this game, Mighton looked ready. And this was the time where, I guess a little bit in the previous game, but like you're starting to see why they're so high on him, which is one-on-one, he can get past anyone, which is a really cool skill to have for a striker. McVeigh was amazing. It seems like they have like one defensive back have an amazing game almost every game, and that's been kind of their backbone. The not being able to score up a man is really strange. I imagine it's something that's going to get worked out. I thought Chucky looked amazing.
He did.
I'm really bummed he didn't get to score because Chucky looked amazing.
Lloris stopped him once, and then Chucky stopped himself the second time where he kind of tripped over his own feet and couldn't get a decent strike on it.
Yeah, and I forget which broadcast I was listening to at that point, and I'll go into this right now, but whoever it was like, Chucky's not usually one who needs a second touch, and the fact that he needed the second touch gave Lloris enough time to come out and... But early in the match, I think I calculated this. It was like 24 minutes into the match. Like they had already given out, this one ref basically had already given out 4 yellows.
Yeah.
Is it only one ref who can give out the cards?
No.
They have multiple.
There's one that keeps that does the job.
Oh, okay.
But,
anyone
you can take your assistant referee or you can take your fourth official. They can say, hey, listen, this is what happened here. This person just cussed me out.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I saw this foul and it was a dirty foul. Like this has got to be a card.
Fair. So I was listening to the radio broadcast when the first few cards happened. And, Adrian and Warren were saying like, hey, these are fouls. Like this is absolutely fouls. And I was like, let me turn on the TV broadcast and see, like, from a neutral point of view, what they're saying about it. And they were ripping this ref left and right, going, you can't play football this way. Like, guys, sometimes a foot's going to touch a foot, and that has to not be a foul, and it's okay. And, like, and at one point, I forget if it was Taylor Twellman or someone else on the broadcast was like, no one wants to watch this kind of football. Like, this is absurd. And they were going after the ref, who was a woman. Mm-hmm. And it, at times, felt vaguely sexist. Because they were basically saying, this woman is ruining our game. And this woman is not letting the men be men. And not letting the men be physical. And physicality is a part of the game. And I actually got sick of it after a while and switched back to the radio broadcast. And I'm glad that I did. But... it was weird that the narrative, at least on the TV side of the game, was at first it was LAFC so much better than SDFC. Later it was, wow, SDFC, what an incredible performance this is when they were up 3-0. And then it was, oh, here comes LAFC. They're going to take the game back. And then when they went down a man, it was like, well, LAFC didn't have the chance. The refs really took this one away from them. I didn't like that narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that one had to be a yellow to send the player off, but it was, and I'll credit Godoy on that for the second yellow as well. Again, there's a flip side of this, right? You can look at it from LAFC standpoint, and I'm guessing that they probably share a lot in common with the television broadcast with Jake Zivin and Taylor Twellman. But, it's funny because I think there was a theme no matter where I went that the refereeing was not great. Yeah. And, I sort of sensed it in the press box. Then I went out because my wife was in the stands, and I went out and met her, and she was with a friend. And the friend's like, man, the refereeing, he's a huge football fan, so he knows it inside and out, my buddy Juan. And he's like, man, this refereeing it leaves a lot to be desired. Yeah. And, I know him well enough to know he's not going to look and say, hey, listen, there's a woman down there with a ponytail. Like, this is...
Sure.
He's like, but can you... And what he said was, can you criticize her? Or, will it come across as sexist if you do? And I said, well, won't it be sexist if we don't?
Yeah. Yeah, there's the other side of it.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, there is the other side of it where, you could say that it sounds heavy-handed because it is a woman, or you can say, well, if you really feel like the refereeing isn't very good and you don't say it, well, then isn't that sexist?
They could have given the exact same criticism to a man, and it wouldn't have felt sexist, and they didn't even have to change their words. It was just the implication because of what I was seeing, right? And the camera was just locked on her, and she's wearing pink, which is making her seem even more feminine. And it was a lot of different things going on. That honestly, like for me, like I'm so happy they won. I'm so happy they beat LAFC, especially because, like, look, I've been to Galaxy games, and I go to Galaxy games, and I'm like, that's fun. I've been to LAFC games. I've gone with you. I've gone with Craig Elson. I've gone with Caesar, who's sitting next to me right here. And all three times, it was before SDFC even had a team. Either me or the other person I was with would look at BMO Stadium, LAFC, something about the game, and go, God, I wish we had something like this in San Diego. And that's why that felt like a rivalry, and that's why it was important for SDFC to stand up and beat LAFC. But it just felt a little less, because they played the last 35, 40 minutes of the game up a guy and still gave up like 5 near goals, which was freaking me out.
Yeah.
And seemed to, the TV guys were like, oh man, if LAFC had a full squad, it just seemed like the refereeing gave them a chance to take away the meaning of the victory for SDFC. So it was a little lesser.
Yeah, I mean, it always feels a little bit unsatisfying if you don't have something that is clear-cut. Cynical is the term that you often hear. Was it clear-cut? Was it cynical what happened in the 53rd minute? Is that enough of a foul that far away from goal that you should show a second yellow and you should show a red? It was a foul. I think we all would agree it's a foul, even if Godoy was super savvy and clever in initiating some of that and making sure that the referee saw it. But it's also part of the game. To your point that if referees are going to referee in a certain way, then you're just going to expect players to perform in a certain way as well. So I could understand. And I think also some of it is, here you have this 5-goal thriller through the first 45 minutes, right? Yeah. 45 minutes plus. You're like, wow, what the hell is going to happen in the second half of this match? And, it wasn't a ton. It wasn't like there was a ton of great saves and, all that. So they
didn't park the bus, though.
No, they did not. It's not ever what they're going to do, especially when they're chasing. And especially the way SDFC plays. They had some scoring opportunities. I think they had the better chances in the second half. The refereeing thing, I mean, I noticed this. I don't know what they did or didn't show on television. I haven't rewatched the broadcast. But even Lozano, who came in the 72nd minute, El Chucky was not happy.
Oh, he's screaming.
And he picked up a yellow card for dissent.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, if that referee wanted to, she could have given him a second yellow card, because at one point he tossed the ball. That is a no-no.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have to call it. So, she did not, but he did while the game was still going, and it hadn't been decided. And after the match, I don't know if they show this at all, the referees usually line up and they stand side by side by side. And most teams and the captains will go up and they'll say,
Thank you.
The coaches will go up, right? It's a protocol of soccer, not just in MLS. And Chucky went up there and was really vocal about whatever he was vocal about refereeing wise, and players had to pull him away.
Oh.
So he had somebody, if it was a player coach, I couldn't quite see because it was on the far side of the field for me. But he had to be pulled away. I was like, Chucky, don't get a cheap second yellow here because then you're going to get suspended Saturday night against Seattle.
Can you get a yellow after the game?
Oh, yeah.
I guess so, yeah.
So, and that's, you can. That'll go right in the match report. And, then all of a sudden, 2 yellow, now you're suspended. That, right? I mean, if he picked up a second during the game. So
he was only in the game for like 17 minutes or something.
So, there was a lot of it. I didn't see anything post-game press conference-wise about, the refereeing. And I'm glad that wasn't the story. And the story should be the win. And the goals. And you're right about Mighton. When I saw Mighton in person, Alex Mighton, who scored the third goal, when I saw him against Columbus 2 Saturdays ago, I guess it would have been 3 Saturdays ago, I was like, whoa, man, this game, it feels quick for him. I thought he was much better in Austin, the game that I called. I thought he was much better in Austin.
Yeah.
And then he was clear. Like, he's gotten better week to week to week, which I think is a really, really good thing for him.
And you can see his confidence building, too, which is helping him.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a guy that hasn't played a ton, and he's a guy that hasn't scored a ton. As far as my research showed, he hadn't scored in a official match since 2023.
Was Nottingham? Was he on Nottingham then?
Yeah, but like Nottingham 2. So, it's been a minute for him. So, anyway, the good news is they play back-to-back home. So they'll be back at home Saturday night against Seattle Sounders.
No travel.
Yeah, Seattle Sounders, which is winless in their last 4. So they get to stay home. They get to train home. They get to do all that sort of stuff. They don't have to get on airplanes and stay in hotels.
In theory, more minutes for Chucky, unless he wants to get thrown out.
Unless something didn't feel quite right. But at the end of it, he said everything felt great, and the place went really bonkers when he came into the game.
He looked great, man.
Yeah.
He looked phenomenal.
Really encouraging. I've not been out there or talked to anybody with the club, so I don't know if he's. Yeah, I don't know what the expectation would be that you ramp him up, but nothing would surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if you do again the same approach, that he'll be a super sub, or if he's worked himself back up into enough fitness where you can consider starting him. But either way, Falakari's been a revelation, and Dreyer still
he's still
Dreyer, and now you feel pretty good about Mighton, and Tomas Angel can get work back into the mix. So, and you're sitting third on the table. So all these things get factored in on a long season, when you're making your decisions what it is you're going to do. But, all in all, I thought it was, it was just, and one thing too, I know a lot of people that are in the supporter section, and I've known many of them for years, probably 10 plus years. But man, there was one dude who is getting so much of the camera time. And it is the dude with the sunglasses, the shirt off, the tattoo, a real tattoo, by the way, on his chest. The crest is tattooed on his chest. His shorts.
It's where it would go if he was wearing a jersey.
Yeah, except it's bigger.
Much bigger.
And I'm like, I'm dying to know this guy. His name is Luis. He's in one of the supporters groups called Bar 18. How did I do? Did I do okay rolling my R's?
That was okay.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm not asking a white guy there. What would you get, like 8 out of 10? 8.5. 8.5? Bar 18. Okay. So, but man, I'm like, this dude, he's been in every match. Like, I'm interested in his story. I want to know more.
Are we going to interview him on Section 1904?
Maybe.
Spanish only interview?
I don't know. I don't know about that.
You did say you trust your Spanish a little bit more after a couple drinks. Maybe we'll have him over here at Mason Ale Works.
Well, it's an English language podcast, so I think.
Are we fencing ourselves in like that?
I don't know, but we can show some range and some versatility.
We can certainly try.
We can call in a ringer if we need somebody to help us on a translation, but I don't think we do. I mean, I think Luis is a local, so
probably be fine.
Yeah, I'm guessing he will be fine. Absolutely. So,
Luis, if you are a subscriber to Section 1904, thank you. We love you.
Before we go, just read one thing. Speaking of subscribers,
please do.
So, obviously, we thank everybody for all the subscriptions, and we've said this before. You and I got an email from a listener named Kevin Clark.
Yes, I was going to ask you about this.
I've anticipated this kind of launch since you departed 760 last year. I've listened Growing up in San Diego during the Too Much Show days, through a TV news career that took me through New York, Florida, and Texas. Having been in the media and journalism, I've also seen talent after talent leave the market because of shrinking budgets. The biggest losers are the listeners and viewers. San Diego sports market is so underserved. The launch of Section 1904 is incredibly welcome news. I look forward to supporting, subscribing, and listening. I'm sure you and John are well equipped, but if you ever need some freelance writing, let me know. I'm happy to help out. This is a fella named Kevin Clark.
I was going to ask if it's the Kevin Clark from ESPN.
At first, I wondered that myself. But Kevin, we might, and it's not just Kevin. There's been a lot of text messages. Saturday night when I was walking out of Snapdragon Stadium, lots of people pulled me aside and said, hey, dig it, enjoying it, thank you, subscribing to it. So thank you to all of those people for helping us get this, helping us try to get this off the ground. I feel like we're still, we've got so much more. We haven't even done a full week yet.
Yeah.
So, we're still working on all that, but we see all the subscriptions coming in, and at some point we will definitely, let it be known personally how much we appreciate all of that.
Yep.
So it's still free. We're still feeling our way around this thing.
Yep.
So give it a listen. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. And how do people email us?
So shout out to Kevin Clark for seeing this. If you go to section1904.com and you click on About Us, there's a link there for Darren's email and mine. If you don't want to take the extra step, I am JG at section1904.com. He is D Smith at section1904.com. Please visit section1904.com and subscribe either to a free level or a paid tier with a free trial that is still very much in effect. For this week, it is my kids' spring break. I have vacation. This is going to be fun for the D. Smith listeners that were always upset when you would go out of town, because now that this is our business, there are no days off really, except for maybe travel days. So Wednesday and Thursday, we're planning on doing this show virtually, me from a hotel room somewhere, Darren, I'm assuming, from his house. And then next week, we'll get back into regular business, and we'll keep building this thing, building this ship while we're out at sea. If you are on Twitter or Blue Sky, please follow us. Section1904.com on Blue Sky and Section1904 on, I guess, X is what it's called now.
Twitter, X.
One of those.
Whatever the fuck. Do we have Instagram?
Not yet. I'm waiting for us to have a picture worth posting.
Do we have Facebook?
No, I'm kind of waiting to see if you forget about that one. I don't want to do that one.
I don't either. I don't really know what the rules are anymore about what platforms you need to be on or don't need to be on. Everybody, even being behind the curtain a little bit at SDFC, we talk a lot about which platforms you need to be available to and who's going where and who's paying attention to what. So it's always like, oh, God almighty. We just need... Kevin, you are very much appreciated for the very nice, kind, thoughtful email. But, we also need somebody to run our social media somewhere down the road as well as we continue to build this thing. So, all right. So Tuesday, a conversation with Richard Deitch about something that I think is significant, and that's Sunday Night Baseball. Does it have any future anywhere? And it's been around since 1990. How many people realize that? Sunday Night Baseball has been a show on ESPN since 1990, and this is its final season on ESPN. So what is its future? We'll talk a little bit about that Tuesday. Thank you to Mason, as always, for being great hosts here in Barrio Logan. Appreciate that. Mason Aleworks. Stop by. Pre-gaming this week. It's just a short hop, a skip, and a jump from Petco Park. And we'll do it again. Be on the lookout in your feeds for Tuesday. And we appreciate all the subscriptions and all the support thus far. So we'll do it again soon.